Yeah. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Can you just tell us about Indiana? What worked the first time for your team, what you did well, and then what you have to do to have that kind of level of success this time around again, if they're
Right.
a little bit different now than they were then?
Yeah. Well, obviously, we made some shots. We hadn't been shooting well going into that game, and we knocked down some 3 pointers, and I think that really obviously helped us and helped with our spacing. The fact that we could make some shots, and they're a good defensive team. They do a great job of swarming the ball. I didn't think we were very good defensively, and we had a lot of breakdowns. They had some opportunities from the free throw line, some shots around the rim, uh, some threes, some perimeter shots that we just had breakdowns on, and they missed. We were very fortunate. If you go back and watch that game, we were very fortunate. We had some stretches where they didn't score, but it was more off of their inability to just kind of finish and make free throws, and just kind of what I just spoke on. But we're going to have to do a much better job defensively, against them this time.
If they don't have Thompson, I'd imagine they play a little bit differently with Jerome Hunter out there.
Right.
Is that something you have to kind of prepare for?
Why it's just normal basketball. You're gonna have to handle them when they're bigger. When Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis play together, or if one of those guys play and they play Hunter at the four and stretch you out a little bit. But it's no different than what everybody else normally has. Everybody has like a stretch four. Not everybody has like two bigs that they'll play together, even though some people will. So like I think we're pretty accustomed by the end of the year to being able to play against either style, but it doesn't mean we'll be efficient. Like I mentioned earlier, like we have to do a better job, defending their actions and just defending them in general.
Right. Just how much do you talk to your team about the four seed and its importance?
Well, I think they understand it and know where we are. It's been mentioned, but it's not something we've gone overboard with. It's
Right.
more worried about the functionality of the game and doing what we're supposed to. Um, I think a lot of things can get thrown around in theory at this point in the season, but you have to go out and be functional and play the right way and compete and beat the team in front of you.
I know you love hypotheticals. So if you win, obviously you clinch the four. If you don't, and Ohio State beats Illinois, you will, I think, be the five because you'll fall behind Ohio State, who you've beaten twice by a
Right.
fraction of a percentage point. I guess I'm asking you hypothetically, would that sit okay with you without the Nebraska game?
Well, it's nothing you can do about it,
Right.
and so who cares? Win the game. You're getting mad after you lose a game. Win the game. Like,
Right.
if we lose, then that's on us. That's our fault.
Right.
And I understand, but it's not like they're not rescheduling a game because of somebody had a sprained ankle. Like we're in a pandemic and our league.
Right. Right.
They did the best that they could to piece everything back together, and we were on the short end on that one. But it's part of it.
Do you feel like you're a more balanced offensive team now than you were 6 weeks ago?
Yes, yes. I feel like we have um, more of pieces that are fitting together, and I think that really helps you. And we have different people stepping up. Aaron Wheeler's really played well the last 3 games. Zach has had some really good games. Jaden, had a good game, especially from the free throw line last game in terms of like scoring the ball. Sasha, obviously, at the end of that Nebraska game, his ability to pass. He had 8 assists in the last game, and trying to get the ball to Travion, trying to get the ball to Zach down there. So, we've had a lot of different people step up. Eric Hunter did a fabulous job, on Dimitri Trice. Isaiah made 2 huge free throws and gave us, quality minutes. So, like, we've had a lot of people. I'm leaving out some people, but we've had a lot of people step up, and that's what you want. You want to be able to have a bench that you can go to, if the other guys aren't playing as well, or they're just, playing better.
Yeah. Now, obviously, it's a pretty positive thing that other guys are, scoring more, kind of taking up more of the load. Do you need more from Travion at this point? Obviously, you're winning. That's the most important part. But I think he's been single digits 3 games in a row, or some such thing? Are you seeing what you want from him at this point? Are people doing a good job on him or doing anything different on him, or how do you kind of view that?
No, not really. I think he's been okay. I mean, Zach's played well. He's gotten some foul trouble. I think there's some, lingering variables in there in terms of like, when you just play him one-on-one and you give him more opportunities, he's gonna score more. He's gonna get fouled more. He's gonna be in the mix more. And if you take some things away from him or whatever, other people are going to be able to get opportunities because you're taking so much away from him. But some of it's just not been on the, not being on the floor.
Right.
Zach's played well, and plus he's been in some foul trouble. And but no, he's been up and down at times because of his foul trouble. But then once he had that stretch for about 3 weeks, but once he got into the second half and settled into the game, he was great. But then he wasn't really good at, the first half. So he's had some different stretches of the year where he'd be, subpar in the first half and just, great in the second half. But sometimes how games unfold, you don't have as many opportunities for the reasons that I mentioned.
I'm good. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt Carmen.
Thank you, Chris. Matt, I'm going to take you back to last spring and when the pandemic was really up there and you guys were really limited in what you could do with your team. You thought that the summer would really hinder the freshmen not get out there and practice as much. Looking back on it now, what were you guys able to practice enough for those guys to develop as quickly as they have, or how concerned were you that they would not get enough reps going into this season?
Well, I think the reps for us are not having it because of the pandemic. Outside of Sasha, like everybody has practiced every single day, and there's not a lot of people in the country that can say that. So I think that's where, if anything was an advantage, that was it, that piece of it. So the one thing about it not being like, if you don't get a chance to practice as much or things as much, normally things are the same across the board. And that's where this pandemic is different, is it's not the same across the board. It's different for everybody. And so you're facing teams that have had to go through something that you haven't had to, and that helps us. That hurts them and it helps us. It doesn't always play out that way, but a lot of times, especially when people first come off of it, it plays out that way. There's a lingering effect to individuals and teams that have had to go through it. So I think that's where our advantage is more than anything.
All righty. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom, you got anything for
Yes, I do. Got a couple. Matt, just a little while ago, I was talking with Rob Finnessy, and Lafayette kid. He was talking about how he's friends with lots of your players and such too. And I was wondering if I could throw you in the Wayback Machine just real quick. When you were on the Indiana All-Star team and that back in your days, and played against all those Indiana guards for 4 years against them, were you friends with those guys much, like the Grahams and those guys?
Yeah, I was friends. I played AAU basketball with Pat Knight and Pat Graham, Todd Leary. And then you played against a lot of the other guys. You played against Greg Graham and Calbert Chaney and the guys that were your age. So you knew everybody. And Matt Nover's a year older than me, but he redshirted. We went on a foreign trip together. So I know Matt. But no, I was roommates with Todd Leary and All-Stars. I was roommates with him at times in AAU. So all those guys. But it's just kind of, it's part of competition and part of a rivalry, I think, especially an in-state rivalry where you're familiar with people, you're friends with people, but then, you got to compete against each other. And they were obviously pretty good in my 4 years.
Yeah. The streak now that's 5 years plus since they've beaten you guys. Have you noticed anything, any benefits from that when you're out recruiting now in the last year or two, that you've sort of had the upper hand in this thing for a while?
I haven't seen those benefits. I mean, you would have to ask the guys that we're recruiting, or the guys that we've signed, or, you'd have to ask them that opinion. But I don't look at it any different in terms of what you're selling. Your product doesn't change in terms of the education, the people, style of play, things of that nature, that kids normally look at when, making their decisions. So, I'm proud of our guys for, not, just being at the top and giving themselves a chance to compete for championships and be in that, it's hard enough. The job's hard enough, and so like a lot of times people are like, go back and forth with a lot of different things, especially when you've, had a little success here. Like, we've lost 4 or 5 straight times to Indiana before. So it's like in those times, it's like, I've been there. So it's, you got to be able to earn the next victory. It's the only thing that matters. That's great that we have a streak, but it'll have nothing to do with this game. It'll have zero to do with this game. And that's the only thing that matters is us having a focus and trying to earn this victory. And that's what I told our guys. And you still have to go out there and do your job. Don't talk in theory. Don't talk about streak. Don't talk about a double bye. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. What matters is, your ability to take care of the ball, your ability to rebound, your ability to execute plays. The functionality of the game is the most important thing.
One last one. Sasha was mentioning earlier that he was always sending messages out to players and that earlier when they would see preseason things that would have you guys 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever.
Right.
That he used that as motivation to push guys. Did you sense among these guys early that they had confidence that they could do what you guys have done this year, or did that take some time to develop?
Yeah, we got half of our team, they don't know. They have no idea what's going on. When you're young, you don't know what to expect. And so like now you tell, freshmen and redshirt freshmen and guys that never played, like, and now all of a sudden, like, you have a pandemic and there's no fans. And, there's part of our group is when we turn around, hopefully next year to sellouts or whatever, they're going to have to go through the process. They're going to have to go through. They've never been on the road. It's a sellout. You can't hear yourself think. So, but no, not really. We had such bigger issues. If somebody's picking us 10th in the league, like, that's their opinion. They're right to say that. You look at who we lost and you look who we have coming in, but you look and say, you're the youngest team in the league. Like, they're not doubting our ability. They're just doubting our inexperience. So I think it's kind of kudos to our players and especially our juniors. Our juniors have done a good job for us this year. And, Isaiah Thompson helped win the game the other day for us, made those 2 free throws. And so, like, our guys that have been here before have done a good job. But the younger guys, like, they don't have a clue. Like, they're just trying to get their feet wet, start summer school. We didn't start workouts till July 20th or 22nd, whenever the date was, when they allowed everybody. So we had so much more of the pandemic and the adjustments we had to make and some of the pauses we had in the summer to, not worry about like where people are putting us. We're in a normal situation like that would be at the forefront. Somebody picking you 9th, like you're using that as motivation to work and, to have a great year. Doesn't mean that some people don't do it, because obviously Sasha's sending text messages out there because he's KG veteran and he's trying to motivate people. So that's smart.
Thank you, Matt.
No problem.
I got one real quick, Chris. Hey, Coach. Just something I've noticed over the course of the year in game situations, whether you got an out of bounds under or out of a timeout and you need a bucket. I noticed a lot of times you kind of delegate to the guys on your staff, whether it's Micah or some of the other guys in the huddle, to whether it's draw something up or give opinions and stuff like that. Can you talk about how you try to delegate to Micah in those situations to get a bucket when you really need it the most?
Yeah, well, it's not sometimes that I do it. That's what we do. I just felt like, you have to use the assets that you have. And a lot of people look at it and it's ego driven, in my opinion. And I've been guilty of that too. It's like, you're the head coach. It's what you're here for. But at the end of the day, you're asking your players to sacrifice. You're asking them to give up some things for the betterment of the team. And I got to be able to evaluate, myself, and I got to be able to evaluate your program. And if you have people on your staff that can I like it that you can just take your focus to one area of the game and leave everything else alone. And that's what I was able to do and change when we had a staff of Jack Owens, Brandon Brantley, and Greg Gary. And then Greg went offensively, Jack went defensively, and then Brandon went to our personnel. And we've just stayed there, kind of a football mentality, and it's really helped us. And at first it was just the play calling, and we would discuss and go back and forth. I would still handle special situations. And as things really kind of took course, it really helped because, I yell at those guys. I yell at Greg. I yell at Micah. I haven't had to do it much with Micah, but when we were first starting with Greg, you're used to, as an assistant, to watch the game. You watch the game. You want to be able to give your 2 cents, but you're watching the whole game. Like, you're not getting, where you're able to have that specification of like, okay, I'm just handling this part of the game and that's it. And so, like, we got to where it's like, they miss half the game because they deal with the offensive piece of it. And then right as that's over and the ball goes the other way, they work towards being ready to call something. So we're organized. Like, I was tired of like yelling plays and then some guy be like, oh, I didn't hear you. Or, I thought you said north and you really said south, or, whatever it might have been. It just felt like it was like a grab bag of excuses. So I said, you know what, we're going to go to a whiteboard. And maybe the other team can see it more clearly, and they know what's going on or whatever. Like, okay, good for them. But at the end of the day, it helped our players and organized our players. And then when we get into special situations or we get plays, we have one voice, and it stayed consistent. And Mike is brilliant. Mike is a very good basketball mind. He's done a lot across the board, obviously with Butler and the Boston Celtics and in our program. So, I would be a fool not to utilize him. I'd be a fool not to utilize, Brandon Brantley with the personnel and staying consistent with tendencies. And then Steve Lutz took over for Jack Owens and has done a great job for our defense. But it's allowed us to have, I think, better structure, better flow, but one voice in that area. If you want to talk tendencies, then go talk to B. If you want to talk from an offensive standpoint, it allows me to manage a game, sub people in and out of a game. I've always wondered why basketball didn't do it more. And as I progressed more as a coach and I felt more comfortable as a coach, let's just do what's best for Purdue. And let's not worry about what other people think or, you're the head coach and you should do this, this, and this. That's ego driven. And you ask your players to sacrifice. And I think it's important that we sacrifice too and do what's best for Purdue.
Just to clarify, so you kind of